Okay, back out in the garage tonight. Tonight we're working on the 2000 Honda CR125. We're going to do some rear wheel bearings. Have the rear wheel off already. So basically we're going to start with, once you have your bolt out, you're going to take your two collars out. You got one on each side. They just pull out. Same thing on this side. Just wiggle it, should come right out. Okay, so once you get your two collars out, grab your seal puller. Hopefully you have one of these. If you don't, you can usually get a screwdriver underneath there, put something across it, and usually you can pry them out. But these are pretty cheap and they make life easy. Pop that guy out. Just pay attention to how that went in. Usually the solid side or the flat side is usually facing out. The inside has, I guess I'll call it recessed. Same thing on this side. Okay, so that's a look on the inside. Once those seals are out of there, you can tell this is the seals have been bad for a while because there's all kinds of dirt in here, and the bearings are definitely crunchy. So your next step is you have to take this. I'm going to call it a collar. I'm not sure if that's the proper term or not, but this it's like a locking collar. It locks in the bearings. You can see there it's got notches going across it. There's a special tool for that, which I have. If you don't have it, I recommend soaking this in some penetrating oil, and you could take something like a screwdriver or something and get it up against there and take your hammer and try to get it to spin counterclockwise. Chances are you're probably going to mess it up. In fact, it looks like whoever was in here the last time might have done it that way. But this is the tool that you need. This is, I believe it's a 47 millimeter. I got this from eBay. There's some numbers on there. I don't know exactly what they mean, but I think it was like 15 bucks. There's a couple different sizes. Like I said, this one's a 47 millimeter. I think there's a 44, if I remember correctly, but definitely make sure you get the right one, and that'll fit right into those grooves, and then you can just put your 3/8 ratchet on there, and hopefully that breaks free. If you end up having problems, even with the tool, once you get your 3/8 drive ratchet on there, you might still have a hard time getting that to start. Like I said, mine, you can tell somebody's banged this up before with a screwdriver, so the tool's a little loose. Not horrible, but couldn't get enough torque with the 3/8 drive ratchet. So I'm resorting to my impact gun, and that's a 22 millimeter impact socket, which instead of using a 3/8 drive, you can get right over the top of the whole tool with that. With that, I was able to get it to break free. Okay, so that's your retainer once you get it out. Now you got access to your bearings, so now we can get these knocked out. We're going to get ready to knock these bearings out. This is obviously the sprocket side. You can see that bearing was in tough shape. It's actually missing some of the balls. So that was shot without a doubt. This is the side. It's actually got two bearings. Hopefully you can see that. And we're actually going to start on the brake side, but we're going to punch out from this side. So I want to show you there's a spacer in here. When I push in on that, you can see the edge of the spacer. So when we're getting ready to knock out from this side, you're actually going to want to push that spacer over as far as it'll let you go. It doesn't go much, like 1/8 of an inch or whatever, but it's enough where you'll be able to take your drift. This happens to be more of a screwdriver, but it's the type that goes all the way through. It's steel. So you want something solid, so some kind of drift or pin or something. And you're going to get that in there, and you're going to get on the back side of the the brake side bearing, and then we're going to tap that out. But before we do that, we're going to start on the brake side, like I said, and we're going to take a propane torch or a MAP gas torch. I like the MAP gas, it burns a little bit hotter. But we're going to take this and we're going to heat up the outside of where the bearing sets in on the wheel. We're not going to heat up the bearing, we're just going to heat up all along the outside here for about a minute or so. You know, be careful, you don't want to get it too hot, you don't want to warp it, but you want to get it hot enough where it expands a little bit, so when we are trying to push that bearing out from the other side, it'll go. Alright, so that's what it's going to look like once you got the brake side bearing out. Once you get that bearing out, that's your spacer. This guy will pull right out now. If you're going to reuse that, obviously clean it up. We're going to repack it with grease, etc. My kit comes with a new spacer, so I don't have to worry about cleaning up the old one, but all this obviously needs to be cleaned out. But before we can do that, we have to knock the sprocket side bearings out. Again, this is the side, it's got two of them. So what we're going to do, brake side up, we got a 21mm impact socket and my long extension. Slide that guy down in there, line it up with the bearings, and then we're going to pound those two out. Alright, so we got all our bearings out. So what we're going to do now, I'm going to take some brake clean and I'm going to clean the inside of this and see what things look like. Alright, back out in the garage tonight, working on the CR125. I'm going to put in the rear bearings. These are from eBay, made by Pivot Works. Alright, so we got our three bearings, two for the one side and one for the other, obviously. Two seals, and this kit comes with a new retainer, which is good, because ours was in pretty tough shape. So for 25 bucks, it's a pretty good kit. Okay, so we're going to start on our sprocket side. Grab one of your bearings. I already got the inside of this greased up. I'm going to put a little bit around this bearing before I drive it in. But notice the edge right there. That's where your first bearing is going to stop. So you can't overdrive it. It's going to hit there, and that's as far as you can go. So I'm going to grease this guy up. Then we're going to take I got an 1.25 inch Craftsman socket. Happens to be just the right size. You want it to fit over the outside race, and that's what we're going to use to drive that in. These bearings are the same on each side, so it doesn't matter which way you put it in. Some bearings do. This particular style doesn't. Alright, so we got our two bearings drove in there. They're bottomed out, so you got just enough space left here for your seal. The open side is going to face down. The solid side obviously is facing up. We're just going to pack the inside of this with a little bit of grease. That's it for this side. Alright, so we're back on the brake side now. We're going to lube this side up a little bit with some grease. And we're going to take our spacer, grease this guy up. And then set this guy in here. He'll bottom out on the back bearing. Alright, so we got our spacer in there, and we're going to take our last bearing. Alright, so now that we got the bearing in the brake side, we're going to go ahead and put our retainer in now. Then after that we'll put our final seal in. I'm having a little bit of trouble getting this new retainer in because whoever was in here the last time used the hammer and screwdriver, which I don't recommend, as I said earlier, because you get it all messed up. So now I'm trying to get this in. It doesn't want to go in straight, but I got it cleaned up the best I can. I actually had to take this out with an impact, and I'm trying to put it in by hand with the 3/8 drive ratchet, but I have a feeling I'm going to have to put it back in with the impact, which I don't like doing, but the last guy didn't leave me much choice. It's in there, it started straight, but that's as far as I can get by hand, so I'm going to try the impact slowly. I'm going to use a 22mm impact socket that fits over the top of this. Alright, so off camera, we had some issues getting our new retainer in. We had to end up using our old retainer, which is pretty beat up. And the reason for that is because whoever was in here before, as I was mentioning earlier about having the right tool, whoever was in here before didn't, and they just beat the heck out of this hub, and it's all, you can't see it now because the retainer's in here, but they had all kinds of mars and dents and dings from messing with the screwdriver. So the new retainer didn't want to start in there right, and it was going to break basically if I forced it. So I ended up taking the old one, which was kind of messed up anyway, so that one went back in, and I still had to drive it part way in, took it back out, drove it in a little further, took it out, and then finally got it to seat the whole way. Not thrilled with it, but it's in there. The bearings are new. They're going to last for a while. So, but next time this comes apart, it's time for a new hub because somebody got antsy and didn't use the right tool. So anyway, they're in. It's going to do what we need it to do for now, but definitely get the tool. If you have to force it out, you're not doing yourself any good, because now we got to get a new hub. It's probably going to be about 150 bucks. So, but anyhow, we're good for now. We got our final seal. Make sure your open end, pack some grease in there, and that goes facing down, and that's going to fit right inside the retainer. So that's it. Bearings, and like I said, we're good to go. A little disappointed in the retainer situation, but everything's in. Got nice smooth bearings. We can put this wheel back in, and we're back to riding.